Teak, what's happening, buddy? How are you today?
Good, man. I'm sure we're going to start with the Hall of Fame, BT. But, I mean, it just takes you back to that 2014 rule change where they made it 10 years as opposed to 5%. And Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens are no longer a part of the conversation.
That's true, and that's where we're going. Just I know that Jerry just said it in his update, which I appreciate, but big day on the fan. Joe Shane will carry his presser coming up at 11:45 live. And then you and I get a chance to to hit him with some tough ones. Just kidding. To welcome him to New York and ask him everything that needs to be asked. The head coach search and Daniel Jones's future, Saquon's future, salary caps in shambles. How do you address that? The draft equity, a couple of top 10 picks. So really looking forward to having Joe on the show. And really from 11:45-ish until Carton and Roberts take over too, and I'm sure they'll pick up with the Giant stuff as well, will be all football. So it gives us a nice window to get into the mess that is baseball. You know, we talk about and you and I have had this conversation for almost 10 years now. Mm-hmm. And I am more tolerant of what ails baseball because at the end of the day, I'm a baseball. I'm in. You got me.
You love baseball.
I'm in my 40s. You know, I've been a fan since the early 80s. I remember probably even late 70s, like with watching games with my dad, and I never stopped. I love the game. So they've got me. I mean, I'm a sucker. I'm going to watch no matter what. I'm watching Yes. I'm watching SNY. I'm watching Sunday Night. I don't know if I'm doing the scorebook like Evan Roberts is doing, but I'm into the sport, right? So this is not really about me, all right? So I tolerate the 4-hour games, and I tolerate, guys who swing from their heels when it's 0-2 and expand the zone and strike out 178 times a year. Nobody cares. And I tolerate the 8 or 9 trips to the bullpen and all the things that have stagnated the game. I tolerate that. What I am no longer prepared to tolerate, Teak, is the misuse of power and the pseudo-moralism coming from these writers who wield the ultimate power. You've got about 350 people, voters, who determine history, and it's got to be overhauled, and it's got to be completely revamped.
How would you change it as it currently exists? Because it is slowly changing, BT. You see it in the number of votes that Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds have gotten increased over the last couple of years, and that's because new voters are coming in. They're less tolerant, or they're less, they're less demeaning of these issues that have plagued the baseball that Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds are the face of. And so they upped their vote. They just kept growing and growing and growing. They got 66% of the vote this year, which is well short of the 75%, but it slowly was changing. And I mentioned the 2014 rule change because that's really what creates this lockjam for Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens. Because if it was old school, if it was still the 5% rule, you just have to keep 5% of the ballot, and then of the vote, you stay on the ballot. Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens would eventually get in because the voters would keep turning over those old, the moral clause. I can't have PEDs in the Hall of Fame. They would age out of it.
I think a lot of them have,
but
that's what's
clearly
disconcerting.
Clearly not enough.
I don't know, Teak. I mean, how many guys that covered or gals that covered the game of baseball, like, I don't know, Tiger Stadium for the 1984 World Series, right? That team that was great. That started 35-5, Jack Morris, et cetera, Alan Trammell. How many of those people are, and unless they were like 20-something, and that was like their first entrance into the game, how many of those people still have votes? I think most have, I don't want to be so callous and say died off, but that's a long time ago.
It is a very long time ago, but there's still 350 votes. And how many of them are public? I mean, 160 or something?
Right around there.
Yeah, so it's not a ton that we know about. So we know that there are people who are preventing these legends who probably, I say definitely, but probably were Hall of Famers before they were accused of doing steroids when it started in 1998. Barry Bonds had already won 3 MVPs, and Roger Clemens had 4 Cy Youngs at that point. So the question then becomes, well, why are they not in? We know that they were great. If they hadn't ever touched the PED, they were great. They were Hall of Famers.
Yeah, I mean, I've come to that.
So why is this still lingering with these Hall of Fame voters? And I read something interesting today, BT, and it was so poignant. It was so right on point. By not allowing them in, you guarantee that they are going to be the conversation after the Hall of Fame vote.
Well, that's an interesting part of the equation because it's really sad that it's become more about who didn't get in versus who did.
That's right.
And listen, we tend to gravitate toward negativity as society, or, it's a little, I don't know. I feel like it's almost more natural, sadly, for a lot of people to emit negative energy these days than it is positivity. So rather than, and by the way, David Ortiz is unique because of, the leak test and the New York Times and everything that came out back in the day.
He's likable.
Exactly. He's a big poppy. He's affable. He's got the big smile. Bleep you, which was a great moment, by the way, with the bombing at the marathon. That was awesome. But yeah, he is. You see him on TV. He's laughing at himself. He's like a big, gentle giant. And then you have A-Rod, who's like, a little tightly wired and a little weird with the facial expressions. The exact opposite of Big Poppy. And A-Rod, has actually, he was pinched, so it's very different. Just wanted to sue baseball and he wanted to take on the Yankees. I don't have any sympathy or empathy for Alex Rodriguez, but it's the other situations now that really bother me to the core. And we are now at the point here, Teak, right? We're at the point where baseball can't even fundamentally do the easiest thing that it is to do pertaining to any sport. You know what that would be?
What's that?
Honor the greatest players of all time. I mean, think about this. We can sit here like the NBA and wax poetic. Wilt, Bird, Magic, Oscar, Dr. J, Cozy, Shaq, Kobe, rest in peace. Reach for, Russell, Kareem, Jordan. Reach for any name, and we can kind of get into stats and, well, where is this guy all the time, blah, blah. But baseball, we can't even get there because we can't even get past the little speed bump of these pseudo-moralists who control baseball. And we are at a point now, Teak, the all-time hits leader, not in. The all-time home run leader, I've got a radical proposal coming in a minute that I don't think you'll like, but I'm going to say it. All-time hits leader, not in. All-time home run leader, not in. Guy with seven Cy Youngs, 2 World Series, an MVP, even though Donnie should have gotten an 86, as we all know, and nearly 5,000 strikeouts. These guys are not in. But the commissioner who oversaw the cancellation of the 1994 World Series and, oh yeah, by the way, was as complicit as anybody, and there was a lot of, that to go around, in the steroid era, he's got a plaque, he's honored, he's enshrined. I'm almost at the point where we should take a crowbar and we should wedge Bud Selig's plaque off the wall and kick his ass out of Cooperstown. How is this guy glorified? And these other guys are just pissed on every year.
Look, I don't
What's going on?
And the question is, how do you change it? And can you change it? And does it need to be changed? Because in a couple of years, let's say a decade or so, we're not going to be having these conversations because there's not all of these guys implicated in the PED scandal, right? It lasted a decade.
No,
right?
it was more than that, but I think it has fizzled out to your point.
But it lasted in our minds for a decade. It was a decade of players that you just kind of associate with being PED users. Now you don't really associate, and I'm sure there are.
No, because now they found the shortcuts.
Right. Well, they found
the masking agents.
They found ways around. I should mask what I'm putting in my body. Oh, that's a good idea.
Always a step ahead.
Can I have the Wizinator? Can you take my pee test for me? Right? There's ways of. My point is, we're not talking about it anymore like we used to talk about it with these PED users, and so it was always in the front of our minds. Now there might be guys still doing it, and they may even get pinched, but we're not talking about it as much anymore. So when these guys ultimately get up for Hall of Fame induction, if they're worthy enough, it's not going to even like this character clause. It includes PED.
Oh, so tired of it.
It's not going to be part of the conversation. And so what we're talking about is specific to a few great players. And Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens happened to be the faces of it because they were the 2 greatest of the era that were associated with it. Yeah. Even though David Ortiz was associated as well, but he's a different character.
Because he's a nicer guy. He was more, had some congeniality with the media.
Well, I mean, that's one of the
big part.
That's one of the things that you can't discount.
Oh, that's a big part of it.
You can't say David Ortiz gets a pass by the media. Because it is media. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about, some committee that was formed by Major League Baseball or the owners putting together a group of people who are going to help create the Hall of Fame or a special Hall of Fame, whatever it may be. These are the writers. These are the guys who dealt with these athletes on a day-to-day basis. And in their minds, if Roger Clemens told you to go blank yourself.
Ooh, did you almost slip up there, buddy?
But if Roger
Dove,
Clemens.
you awake, Dove, just in case we have to dump something? All right, just checking, Dove.
Roger says go blank yourself on one of these days because you were pissing him off about something, and that bias is in the back of your head.
That's
and now
what
all of
drives
a
me
sudden,
crazy.
you have the character clause to keep him out of the Hall of Fame. You're going to do that.
Yeah.
Right? That's the reality of who are voting for the Hall of Fame classes.
And here's one thing that also drives me crazy, and then we're going to hammer out these calls here, is that there are so many of us that were in the stands, whether it was the 96 Yankees, the 98 Yankees, the 99 Yankees, the 2000 Yankees, and even Met fans, obviously, in 2000. We know what happened there. The good guys won. But, Met fans who love that team, and rightfully so. Great energy, really good team with good spirit. The 2009 Yankees, of course, there were remnants of the PED era on that team. Let's not be foolish. Maybe when the Mets lost in the World Series in 2015, maybe it was almost fully eradicated. But my point is, I guess you can, but it's so disingenuous to hold this position of, I will not tolerate, the cheating aspect and the distortion of Major League Baseball's record book. And you want to keep these guys out. Yet, your behinds were in the stands, either in the Bronx or in Queens, cheering on teams that we know had steroid guys on them. That we surmise who it might be. And without just dropping names so cavalierly, we won't do that. But come on, let's just be consistent.
Yeah.
Let's be consistent. Consistency's missing. I'm going to use the term, as I already have a few times, pseudo-moralism. And here's the other thing, too. So obviously, not all of them. I'm not here to impugn the integrity of good people. But are you telling me that of the 350 some odd writers who have control over who goes into that beautiful museum, are you telling me that some of those people aren't closet racists, didn't slap around a woman, God forbid, didn't do things that are so disgusting, and they got the balls to come out here and judge people for putting something into their body when everybody was doing it? You got to be kidding me. Let's go to Staten Island. Vinny is on the fan. What up, Vin? How are you today, Vinny?
Hey, good morning, guys.
Yeah.
Good morning,
Great
Vinny.
show, as always. Hey, listen, my opinion is, first of all, I have too much power. But that era, and I'm mid-50s, I'm 55 years old, baseball was great. I mean, granted, yeah, okay, so they cheat, whatever you want to call it. The leader of cheats is in the Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. Why don't they just make a section, the Bud Selig section, put them all in as a one-time deal, and let it go.
Yeah,
These guys deserve to be in.
Vinny,
come on.
that's an interesting stance that a lot of people have taken regarding the Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
Is that treat it more like a museum,
Which is what it is at the end of the day. It's
exactly,
all it is.
and it's and ignoring. By not putting in the Barry Bonds and the Roger Clemens of the world, you're trying to ignore the history of the game, right? This era of baseball that was magnificent from a fan standpoint. I mean, let's face it. That's what wrapped a lot of who were young kids at the time into the game. These home run derbies and the massive caricatured nature of some of these players. Like I can still see Mark McGwire just feeling larger than life playing, baseball, and then Sammy Sosa the same way, and obviously Barry Bonds was that way as well. Just like you just were like you couldn't take your eyes off of them.
Yep.
And I remember games being broken into because these guys are up to bat, playing on the West Coast. Like, I don't care. I'm watching the Braves and whoever, the Orioles play. All of a sudden, we got to cut in. Barry Bonds is up to bat.
Yep.
See if he hits a home run.
Well, it was before MLB Network, so Sosa digging in Wrigley.
And so it was a part of baseball that was, I think, he was electric.
It really was.
It may have been my favorite era of baseball, to be honest with you. Not knowing what was going on, and even if I had, I probably wouldn't have cared. But I don't know. It's just you can't ignore that. You can't ignore that existed in Major League Baseball, and the writers seem to be wanting to whitewash it away by keeping the characters from that era out.
Yeah, they don't have that authority. Nobody's bestowing that power on them. And if anybody has, and maybe it's been indirect, well, it actually has been bestowed upon them, then it needs to be scrubbed from them. Listen, a lot of people have talked about coming up with different tiers within the Hall of Fame. Like over here would be, say, Ted Williams, Lou Gehrig, Ty Cobb, etc., Steve Carlton, Tom Seaver. On the first floor, I'm just throwing names out. And on the third floor, Harold Baines, Craig Biggio, and Bert Blyleven. No, that's ridiculous. Yeah. What's not ridiculous is having truly a space, a wide space dedicated, same plaque, same enshrinement, but with the acknowledgement that it was a different era, and we're not trying to fool anybody. But we watch these guys play.
I've never been to Cooperstown, BT. How is it set up?
It's the best.
Like when you walk in, what do you see, and how is it set up? You know what I mean?
I mean, they've got everything. It's not just plaques.
Is it by era, by enshrinement? Like, how is it?
You know, it's so funny that you asked me that question. I went there. I was 11,
and a while ago.
I was 11, and I had a game up there, a tournament up there, and then I went back up for another tournament during a summer league in college, but that's 20-something years ago. So, I mean, I actually forget the main entrance. Like, I can't even really visualize the main entrance at this point, because the second time we went, we had triple header, and we barely even got to go. So, really, my main memory is from when I was a kid, and I'm going to take my son soon and my whole family. But I feel like it's somewhat random. Like, I don't know that it's necessarily split up by era.
So it's not chronological.
It's artifacts. I think certain parts are.
Yeah.
And listen, a lot of the callers have been there far more recent than me, but I mean, this judge and jury nonsense is just flat out wrong, and it's rubbing everybody the wrong way. It's unnecessary. Eric is in Rivervale on the Fan with Tiki and Tierney. Eric, how you doing today?
I'm well. Tiki Tierney, how you guys doing, gentlemen?
We're good, man.
Good, buddy.
What's happening?
Congrats so much on the show. Love the show. You guys doing great work. So,
appreciate you.
Love to listen. Really wish I was calling to talk about the Yankees and the offseason and the excitement around pitchers and catchers. But, once again, Major League Baseball can't get out of their own way. And the powers that be, again show that they just don't get it.
Yeah.
And it's really, really unfortunate because, you're talking about an entire generation that are seeing the players that they want to celebrate. Now we have to talk about those that don't get in because of some, 350 clowns that think that they are better than everybody else when we all saw these guys play. I mean, Tierney, I completely agree with you. And I look at, like, a Roger Clemens, for example, these same 300-plus clowns were the ones that gave him 7 Cy Young. But now they're saying he's not good enough to be in the Hall of Fame? Like, it makes zero sense. It's very frustrating. And it really it's destroying the game of baseball.
Yep.
For our younger generation. My kids are the same age as yours, Jerry. I mean, my son loves baseball because I love baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't seem to get that. And it's really unfortunate that, you see other sports, whether it's football or basketball, and some of the bigger sports really growing while baseball continues to just destroy their own product. And I don't quite understand how you change it.
Here's the problem. I don't
really
necessarily, Eric, thanks for the call. I don't necessarily know how you change it. I've got some ideas, but I can get to the root of the issue. The root of the issue, and it all funnels down, is just a lack of leadership.
Yeah. Yeah.
Honestly.
Because it does feel like there is no one in charge.
Well, I'm talking about the commissioner. Yeah. He's in charge, but does anybody really get the sense
he's
he's
in
a good
charge
leader?
of the Hall of Fame as well?
No.
Because in the NFL, it's different. Obviously, the Hall of Fame is independent, technically, of the NFL. Is the Major League Baseball independent?
No, I believe they've got I believe his title, because I think I've seen him on MLB Network a bunch. God, I don't know the exact title. Yeah. I certainly forget his name.
It doesn't matter. But Eric's point is interesting because of where we are right now regarding the collective bargaining agreement. So we're talking specifically about the deterioration of the history of the game because of not allowing these greats into the Hall of Fame, while at the same exact moment, the future of the game, the present and the future of the game, is being threatened because these guys can't get a collective bargaining agreement worked out. Now, it seems like they're taking steps.
True.
But the reality is, he's right, Eric. We should be talking about what's this guy, this team signed this guy got this. Look at their rotation now. Look at, who's going to come out of nowhere? What are the Rays going to do? What are the Yankees, et cetera? And instead, we're talking about, can these guys agree on arbitration time? And
there's nothing positive right now. That is an outstanding point. I mean, there's labor strife, and there's historical strife. Wow. Good job, guys. Running the show well. Good job, baseball. 877-337-6666. Let's do this, guys. Let's be positive. We can all just, rail on the game. Let's be about solutions. All right, let's be about solutions. We all know that it's inconsistent and wrong. So how do we fix it? Let's try to come up with a solution and push this thing forward rather than a constant regurgitation of what we all know is not right. 877-337-6666. Tiki and Tierney on the Fan.